On this episode, we'll be hitting all the basic beats. After the initial success that Mattel had had with its first run of characters with Masters of the Universe, or MOTU as the fans call it, they decided to go big. And they worked with Filmation Studios to make a cartoon that went on to become very famous and successful in the 80s. And in that storytelling, they needed to do some world building. So the first part of the world that they built was they took Castle Grayskull, which had originally been sort of ambiguous as to whether it was for good guys or bad guys. It just depended on who controlled it. They pretty much just said that's going to be for the good guys. So they let that be kind of He-Man's headquarters. But what they actually did was they gave the Green Goddess a place to live. So she didn't have to just live in the forest anymore. Now, they also swapped her out. She was no longer the Green Goddess. She was no longer the same mold as Tila. There was no longer going to be a confusion about, is she the goddess? Is she Tila? Who is she? So they changed her from a snake into a bird. Gone was the Green Goddess for now. And in came the sorceress with her bird motif. So the sorceress took up residence in Castle Grayskull. She lived there, she protected it, and she had all of the power and the weapons for Grayskull inside there that she would give to He-Man as he needed to fight against Skeletor. And so Skeletor needed a place to live. So they created Snake Mountain, and Skeletor would live in Snake Mountain with his evil forces. One other fun thing about the sorceress was that she could turn into Zoar the Falcon. And Zoar came with a fun little stand that he could perch on. Actually, I think initially when they released Zoar, it was sort of a he, but then she became the bird form of the sorceress. So I guess Zoar is a she now. So Zoar the Falcon. And when you played, you could pretend that the sorceress would full on turn into Zoar and then be able to fly all around. And another interesting note about the Zoar mold was that it was another leftover from the Big Jim line. Again, a big eagle this size made total sense for a Ken and Barbie sized action figure. But Mattel was like, you know what? It even makes more sense in this wacky world of Masters of the Universe where you might just have a giant bird. I think another reason why they swapped out the Green Goddess for the Sorceress was because it was a little bit confusing that a woman who dressed like a snake would live in a castle with a big skull on it, and the man with a skull for a face would live in a castle with a big snake wrapped around it. So to avoid any confusion, they just got rid of her and replaced her with the Sorceress. It's a shame, too, because her green skin really went well with the green exterior of Castle Grayskull. But don't worry, we'll see her again in some later lore. The world where He-Man and the Masters of the Universe lived was called Eternia. In the center of all the action was the royal palace of Eternos. And the king and queen, King Randor and Queen Marlena, ruled righteously over the land. They had taken the Man-at-Arms character and his look to expand it into the Royal Guard. So it was an army of soldiers to protect the king and queen and the palace. And they really leveled up Tila, and they gave her the position of captain of the Royal Guard. A very cool progressive move, giving a woman a very powerful position in a kids show in the 80s. And speaking of kids, they introduced the character of Orko. So Orko was the silly court magician who would cast silly magical spells to entertain everyone. And he kind of served as sort of the avatar for the child watcher. If you were an 8-year-old watching Masters of the Universe cartoon and you saw the silly antics of Orko, you would think, yeah, I can kind of relate to him. The king and queen had a family. For starters, they had a pet. They had sort of a scaredy cat a cowardly lion motif. And they had a son. This is Adam, Prince of Eternia and defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. And this was Cringer, his fearless friend. Fabulous secret powers were revealed to him the day he held aloft to his magic sword and said, "By the power of Grayskull." Cringer became Battle Cat, and Adam became He-Man, the most powerful man in the universe. Only 3 others shared his secret. His friends, the Sorceress, Man-at-Arms, and Orko. Together, they defended Castle Grayskull from the evil forces of Skeletor. And so those are the basic plot points. Rinse and repeat. It was very episodic. Skeletor would come up with some sort of horrible plan to rain terror and destruction on the Palace of Eternos, or maybe try to take over Castle Grayskull. Adam would have to turn into He-Man and save the day, send Skeletor packing back to Snake Mountain, all the while keeping it a secret from his friends and family, including his potential on-again, off-again love interest, Teela. The more modern incarnations of Masters of the Universe, the Netflix show from Kevin Smith a few years ago, and also the 1987 movie that was sort of at the run of the 80s height of He-Man with Dolph Lundgren in it. Those movies both sort of toyed with the idea of the what if. What if Skeletor got away with it? What if He-Man wasn't able to foil his plans and send him packing back to Snake Mountain? What if he took over Castle Grayskull? What if he got the power? What if? The Travis Knight movie coming out this summer maybe it's also going to explore some of those notions. What happens if Skeletor were to take over? What would He-Man do? Speaking of the Netflix show and the 87 movie, as most people in the fandom know, those properties were at best divisive, and dare I say, a low bar was set. So we are hoping that this movie coming out this summer is going to just absolutely nail it. Stay tuned next time where we'll take a peek inside the palace and we'll take a deeper dive into the good guys. Subscribe!